the event horizon. It's exciting to talk about it, and you should know about it for the way we use it. Now, what is a event horizon? Technically, an event horizon, I think the body of work where they talk about it is astrophysics. But I won't go into my opinions about some of these theories or whatever they want to call them these days. But it's supposedly on a black hole, there is a when you're viewing it out in space, there is a point at which something is beyond the horizon of it. I don't want to give we could talk about what that is some other time, but there's a point at which you cannot see what's happening beyond that point. And that I use the phrase event horizon for our coming opportunity. There is a great opportunity that is headed our way. And what essentially happens at the event horizon, and it is, ladies and gentlemen, it is approaching. It is rapidly approaching, and there are more signs of it every day. We'll talk about some of those signs in just a moment. But essentially, what happens at the event horizon, and we can't see beyond this societal, racial, national, cultural event horizon, because we cannot model human creativity. We cannot model exactly how a community is going to respond. Are they going to be courageous, or are they going to be pusillanimous? I mean, so since we can't model those things, there is a horizon there that we see that we can't see beyond. We can see up to that point. We can make legitimate predictions and assessments, etc., up to that point. After that point, everything there is just fiction writing. So what happens at that point, though, that what the edge is for us, the event horizon for us, is when the anti-white hegemony power structure begins to break down. And it breaks down to a point that opens the door for us. If we are powerful enough to get through that door, we can recapture our destiny. Now, ultimately, the way it is going to begin breaking up, there are a lot of mechanisms. We don't have a lot of time, but the easiest way to encapsulate and to understand in this moment is that anti-whiteism is composed of this infernal coalition of people who are only appear united because they have a common victim. So these anti-whites are not actually, these different subgroups of anti-whiteism are not actually united. They don't actually all like each other. They don't actually all tolerate each other, not even a little bit. But they all have a single victim. So they appear to us to be united. Now, they know that they're not united. They're talking about this. I've mentioned this before. The anti-white elites, those who are paid to strategize, those who are paid to figure out how to keep this giant infernal train to hell running on the tracks, they are very worried about what we're calling the event horizon. Now, what exactly is it? It is that moment. Now, it's a difficult thing to ascertain because we are talking about human perception, and we're talking about the perception of individuals and then of those individuals that compose the different groups. Now, you have the racial groups, but then you also have religious groups, and then you have different subgroups of those groups. So it makes it very difficult to ascertain exactly where the perception is, but we can see signs. Now, the perception I'm talking about is the perception of, I guess we could say, for the average anti-white person, not white, non-white, whatever religion, doesn't matter, is whether or not they are able to perceive and convince themselves that white people still hold some predominant power, that they're not, that they're on the ascendancy, or that they're robust, they're strong forever, whatever it might be, the anti-white narrative. At some point, and this is already happening now, there are anti-whites of all stripes who are looking at the white race, and they're already saying, white race is defeated. It's over for them. Their numbers are shrinking. How many of you out there have heard that with increasing regularity each year? More and more anti-whites saying, you're done. You're not having babies. You're not standing up for yourselves. This is how many of you all are hearing that? I'm hearing it more every month. Every year when you look back over the years, how many anti-whites, say back in the 80s, would have said, oh, you all are finished? How about back in the 60s? You all are done. Well, the die was already cast back then. We already had lost control of our destiny. But nobody or few people were perceiving it. Now, every year, many more anti-whites perceive that the white race is done. That is a big problem for the anti-white elites. Because as that percentage grows in each category, those individuals in those categories are going to look around and they're going to say, I know the anti-white narrative is that the white race are the only bad guys. The Western kind, they're the bad guy. Westman, everywhere I go, it's the Westman is the bad guy. But the white race is finished. They're not the real contender for me and my group and my personal. Remember now, when it comes to non-white groups, this may or may not be true, but when it comes to them, they are much more aware than we are that their individual well-being is determined by their group's well-being. So they are going to look out there with eyes that are not like yours at all. We are relearning that here in Going Free, that our individual well-being is achieved by way of our group well-being. We are relearning that. But the non-white people are going to look out at the world and they're going to say, as my selfish interests are at stake, and I know the anti-white narrative is that it's the Westman, but I also know that the Westman is finished. This is going to be their perception. It has nothing to do with objective reality. The perception that we are finished. And that perception is rapidly growing. It's spreading. And the anti-white elites are terrified of it. So as they say that, they then say to themselves, who else then is the competitor for my well-being? It's no longer the Westman. Who is it then? Is it going to be this other group over here that wears this kind of hat or that kind of hat? Is it going to be this other group here that has this kind of hair or that kind of hair? This different religion or that different religion? And the moment that happens, our opportunity opens like a supernova detonating, to continue with the metaphor of space. Because as they turn to each other in concern for their individual well-being, and they worry about the other anti-white subgroups, we will be forgotten. And as we are forgotten in their minds, and they begin to exact horrible injustice on each other, those will not be things that will be easily overcome in the following years. They'll remember, just like we remember in Europe, that battle that was fought 2,000 years ago, and it created this line in the sand, and now we hate the people on the other side because the anti-whites throughout the West are not going to be able to forget and overcome what the future injustices that will be done by the other non-white groups or the other anti-white groups out there. They will hold deep animosity, and the anti-white elites won't be able to bring them all back together easily to be able to wield them like a club against us. That, you see, is the opportunity. This is the event horizon I talk about. So what has to happen there? When we reach the event horizon, we have to be powerful enough to recapture our destiny at that moment. And when I say that moment, it's not going to be a day or weeks or months. There are going to be years of opportunity, a window of opportunity for us to recapture our destiny and to set things right once again for us. We have to be powerful enough to do that at that moment. There is not going to be another opportunity until long after societal collapse, long after dystopia, long after Mad Max environment. That will be the moment that we have to strike and recapture our destiny. That will be the weakest the anti-whites will have been since they came to power, is that event horizon. We will be ready for it. Now, what are the signs of it? Some of the signs we'll just run through quickly. Hyper-censorship. Censorship is going through the roof. Just ask yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what would it have been like to speak out against, to be a heretic? So we have hyper censorship taking place, getting worse all the time. I mean, look at Red Ice just censored off of, we can name so many more. Rising socio-political and thought oppression. People are being jailed all over the West. People are being, Johnson just kicked out unceremoniously of a country. Jared Taylor, so many others. A guy I spoke about out on the West Coast, record so clean, he could have a concealed carry permit, and the country of Canada didn't like his ugly tattoos and funny way that he waved. And so the country banned him from entering. Massive rising socio-political and thought persecution, signs of the coming event horizon. Why are they signs? Because the anti-white elites, they know this is a desperate time that's coming for them. They need to stop us from creating community. They know that that is what will afford us the opportunity to recapture our destiny during those weakest years of their power. Purity spiraling is another sign of the approaching event horizon. We see anti-whites victimizing other anti-whites, bringing them before these anti-white tribunals, socially lynching them because they're not anti-white enough. Increasingly, we see this purity spiraling in anti-whiteism, lynching their own anti-whites. Innumerable programs. We just had Edgar Allan Poe tell us about one. At work, at universities, these are proliferating beyond count that compel you practically at the point, a bayonet point, to be anti-white. Again, everything they can do to stop our community from coming to fruition, from being able to form that nucleus that can raise that banner to recapture our destiny. You remember that thing we talked about months ago about how there couldn't be a civil war under any concept, and these people started trying to move the goalpost. No, when I say civil war, I actually mean nothing like civil war. No, there can't be resistance if there isn't a nucleus. We're building a nucleus to recapture our destiny. So, as I said, we talked about the anti-white subgroups are beginning to perceive themselves increasingly as individual groups who have as competitors or challenges to their individual well-being and therefore their group's well-being, that have as competitors not just the white race, and increasingly less so because they believe white race is finished. So it's not this race that's the problem anymore. It's this maybe non-white race, or it's this religious group, or it's this political group. You can all give examples of that. I see it everywhere. Never seen this much disunity. And it is rapidly growing. So we see these increasing schisms. You'll see, and this is, mark my words, over the coming next 5 years, big fractures in the monolith of anti-whiteism. Big fractures. You'll see prominent individuals speaking out against other anti-white subgroups. And the anti-white media will do everything it can to play it down, to try to buy them off some more time. Just stick with the program a little bit longer. But you'll see it more and more. You'll hear about it more and more. Now is the time, ladies and gentlemen, that we have to be doing what we're doing, that we have to be building community. We have to build community like there is no tomorrow, like we don't have any tomorrow to do any building with. We have to build through the night. So ask yourself, what is community? Community is family. Community are men and women getting together, getting married. Community is having babies. Community is teaching them to be white positive, teaching them to go free, teaching them to serve white well-being. And those who cannot have children, those people have to be contributing in every way that they can to community. Culture, art, literature, writing, philosophy, fiction, nonfiction. Every element is needed. Everything is needed. There is no small part here. We need to build community, and there's no line separating digital community from real IRL. I'm doing IRL all the time, and it's the exact same thing. I have the exact same love here I have in person. Don't let anyone tell you differently. We need to be building community as rapidly as we can. That means we have to be helping people to go free. We need to be bringing them into this, the only real community building project, because you have to have the psychology. You can't just get a bunch of people together. You have to address the psychological element. Look at South Africa. That is what happens when you just get a bunch of people together and say, let's try to resist. That's not enough. You need to address the psychological element, which means you need to address the psychological warfare that has been inflicted on us. That is what we are doing with going free. That is why we have these conversations. That is why I come to you again and again and again, so that we can heal ourselves and then heal our loved ones and our friends. And all of the time building community, all of the time increasing the variety of things like the music we have, of the literature that we have, that we create. Don't you dare let an anti-white tell you that anything that we're making is anything less than the filth that they produce. And don't you dare allow yourself to think otherwise. Here's the thing you have to understand. Listen close to this. Power in this universe, with the human animal, power is intelligence and money. Intelligence and money. That is power. And it can be broken down into a more complex dynamism. What you need to understand is intelligence and money. If you have enough intelligence and enough money, you rule the world. Intelligence and money. Now, the reason why I'll just briefly say money is because money is the medium by which it's the thing we use to trade for the things we need, for the things we want. That means, like it or not, that people are bought. And we can go over this another day, and we can talk more deeply about it, but of course we're running out of time. There is something that can be wielded as a counterweight against money. Does anybody know what it is? We have the intelligence. We have brilliant people serving white well-being. We have enough intelligence. Money helps, but we're never going to have enough money. The contributions given today are magnificent, absolutely breath-catching. When I saw all of these great super chats today, these great investments in the cause of white well-being, and especially Final Blossoms, it took my breath. That our people are rising now, that there are heroes like the folks whose names I'm reading out, creating art, making investments. All of that is valuable, but it doesn't compete with the infinite supply of money that anti-whites can print. So we need a counterweight. The counterweight to that infinite money is community and faith.